That rifle was more than a lump of metal. It was a present, a father's gift to his son. And now that choice, an object passed down inside a family, sits at the center of one of the most shocking criminal stories of recent memory. Tyler Robinson, accused in the assassination of Charlie Kirk, allegedly carried into that moment not only anger and ideology, but also the literal weight of something his father had given him. Prosecutors say the rifle matched the very weapon the father later identified. Picture the father in that courtroom, realizing the gun he once handed to his son is the same one tied to the death of a public figure. What is that supposed to feel like? Shame, betrayal, or something darker? Denial, silence, or the resigned acceptance that warnings were missed? Let's be honest, parents notice things about their children the rest of the world doesn't. A change in tone, a flash of anger, an offhand remark that sticks with you. Did Tyler's father see any of that and set it aside? Or did he, like so many parents, assume his son would grow out of whatever it was? And here's the question everyone shrinks from. What if he hadn't turned his son in? Think about it. Police released images hoping for leads. It wasn't investigators who solved the case first. It was parents who looked at those photos and said, "That's our son." If they had kept silent, how long might Tyler Robinson have stayed hidden? How many more days would headlines have read "suspect at large"? How much more harm could have followed? Is the father a hero for coming forward, or does that act only underline the series of failures that led here? Officials say the rifle was found wrapped in a towel near the scene. DNA tied it to Robinson. His own father recognized it. But why did that recognition become possible? Why does a parent hand their child a bolt-action rifle without fully imagining what it could someday be used for? Was it tradition, politics, or negligence disguised as bonding? Zooming out, Tyler Robinson grew up in a conservative household in a conservative town. His parents gave him values, structure, rules. Yet, according to his mother, he changed, becoming more politically engaged, more outspoken, more sympathetic to marginalized people, and entering a relationship that ran counter to his family's worldview. How does that kind of shift occur under the roof of a conservative home? Did his father label it rebellion? Did he push back? Did debates about politics, identity, or purpose ever happen? Or did silence once again win? And the investigators had to ask, when the rifle was recovered, DNA matched, and a note was found saying, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it." How many people saw this coming? How many times did Tyler give off online or in-person signals that might have prompted intervention? Do law enforcement officers feel frustration with the family for not securing the rifle, leaving it in a closet, vulnerable to misuse, or relief that the father ultimately stepped forward? Should the father be blamed, praised, or both? These questions are uncomfortable because here the family dynamic is inseparable from the crime. A father gives a gift, a son accepts it. A household sees the weapon and assumes control will never be lost. But control slipped. And once it did, there was no turning back. This isn't just about one rifle or one family. It's about a lot of households across America that casually hold weapons, believing tradition or trust is enough. How many families are ignoring late-night posts, odd comments, and simmering anger beneath their own roofs? We come back to the father, the man who admitted he recognized the gun, who picked up the phone, told investigators, and ultimately helped place his son in custody. Is that redemption or a confession? Did he stop a greater tragedy, or did his earlier choices make the tragedy possible? Ask yourself, if your child had done the same, would you turn them in? Would you recognize the rifle you once gave, knowing it was now linked to blood and history? Or would you hide it, protect them, and carry the secret? This case forces us to look beyond the accused and at his family. A conservative father, a son who changed, a passed-down rifle, a silence that lasted too long, and a nation left asking who failed Tyler Robinson first, the father, the community, the police, or all of us together. Stay with us. The answers only get more complicated and the questions more uncomfortable. If you haven't already, subscribe, because this is just the beginning of a story that won't let you walk away without asking, what if? The breakthrough didn't start with police or prosecutors. It started with a father. He admitted, in words that echo through this case, that he recognized the rifle his son allegedly used to take a life. Imagine being a parent and seeing a photo of a weapon tied to a national tragedy, realizing it's the same gun you once handed your child. That's not just evidence, that's guilt, that's a confession, and that's where this story begs. Inns Tyler Robinson, 22, is accused of killing Charlie Kirk in Utah on September 10, 2025. Prosecutors say he used a bolt-action rifle wrapped in a towel and abandoned near the scene, which carried his DNA on the trigger. His father viewed the photos and told investigators he believed it was the same rifle he had once given his son. The rifle wasn't stolen or bought off the street. It was handed down in trust, a symbol of family bonding. But that bond has now become evidence. So here's the first uncomfortable question. How does a father justify giving a rifle to a son already showing signs of unrest? Did he not notice the online activity, the posts, the outbursts? Or did he see them and convince himself it was just a phase? Parents often believe silence keeps the peace, but silence can be deadly. Did Tyler's father choose silence over action? And if so, how much responsibility does he carry? Then the twist. While the father admitted he recognized the gun, he also did what few parents could imagine. He turned his own son in. The police released photos. His parents looked. They called authorities. Tyler surrendered. What if they hadn't? What if the father, instead of confronting reality, had chosen denial? Could Tyler have vanished? Could there have been more victims? Would law enforcement have ever caught him without the family's intervention? That's the paradox. On one hand, the father gave him the rifle. On the other, the father gave him up. Which act defines him more? Which one should history remember? Let's dig deeper. Court records show investigators found a note under Robinson's keyboard that read, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it." That chilling, deliberate line prompts another haunting question. How could he write that while living in the same house as his parents? Did they ever pass his door at night and sense something was wrong and yet never ask? What were the conversations like at the dinner table? Did politics come up? Did ideology turn into arguments? Or was there a rule never to mention it? And his mother told investigators Tyler had recently grown more political, more vocal about gay and trans rights. He was in a relationship and living with a roommate who was reportedly transgender. That's a dramatic shift inside a conservative home. How did his parents respond? Did his father clash with him? Did his mother try to mediate? Did Tyler feel supported or trapped between the world at home and the one online until something snapped? The family dynamic is not a footnote. It shaped every action Tyler took, from post to the note, from carrying the rifle onto a campus to ultimately surrendering. Conservative values, a gifted rifle, silence in the face of change, and then a father's confession. Now about the bullets. Investigators say they found casings with engravings, messages carved onto the ammunition itself. These weren't random rounds. They were symbolic, deliberate, personal. Who etches words into bullets before loading them? Did anyone in the family know about his rituals and obsessions, or were those signs ignored in plain sight? And what about law enforcement? Do they resent the family for not locking the rifle away, leaving it accessible? Or are they grateful the father finally spoke up? Usually investigators build cases from physical evidence, but here family recognition and testimony were the turning point. Does that make the father an ally or an accomplice who only came forward too late? And consider this provocative thought. What if the father had destroyed the rifle before Tyler ever touched it? What if the father had destroyed the rifle before Tyler ever touched it? That single choice, had it been made, could have rewritten everything. A rifle dismantled, a family heirloom never passed down, and perhaps Charlie Kirk would still be alive today. That haunting what if doesn't just linger in the air. It hangs over this case like a shadow, stretching across every courtroom testimony and every whispered conversation. It flips the entire narrative upside down. It forces us to imagine a reality that might have been, and to question why it never was. But reality has no rewinds, and what did happen inside that house is far darker than what might have been. Court records later revealed investigators found something else, something far more intimate than the weapon itself. A note, not lying out in the open, but hidden, carefully tucked beneath Robinson's keyboard, as if he wanted it to be discovered only after the act was complete. It read, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it." Those words weren't scribbled in a moment of anger. They were measured, purposeful. That chilling sentence wasn't an impulsive outburst. It was a declaration, deliberate, etched with intent, written inside a home where two parents slept just rooms away. Picture that for a moment. A quiet suburban house, the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, a television turned off hours earlier, bedrooms dark, curtains drawn, a father, a mother, both asleep under the illusion that their household was safe. And in the stillness of night, Behind a single closed door, a young man hunched over his desk, pen scratching against paper, keys tapping softly under dim light, drafting a plan that would soon shake headlines and alter lives forever. Did his parents never feel it? Did they never sense the weight pressing against those walls? Did they ever pause at his door, hand raised to knock, only to pull away and whisper to themselves, "He's just tired. He'll be fine tomorrow"? And what about at the dinner table? Did words like politics and identity vanish the moment forks touched plates? Was their laughter forced to mask unease, silence thick enough to choke on, a fragile peace that depended on pretending everything was normal? Robinson's mother would later admit her son had become more political, more outspoken, louder than before. His voice carried not just opinions but passion, sometimes fiery, sometimes defiant. He spoke openly in support of gay and trans communities. He even shared space with a roommate who was reportedly transgender. And that reality and his new world, his new circle, his new values clashed violently with the conservative type household he came from. Imagine the pressure of that tension. A young man pulling himself in one direction, a family pulling him in another. Identity against tradition, self-expression against silence. Was his father quietly taking this as rebellion? Did slammed doors, harsh words, and long silences fill the late hours of their nights? Or did the family simply fold into their old habit? Silence. Silence that looked like calm. Silence that pretended peace. Silence that covered wounds instead of healing them. And that silence isn't a minor detail. It's not a footnote. It is the core of this entire case. Because this story isn't just about Tyler Robinson. It's about the home that shaped him, the environment that nurtured both his beliefs and his anger. Every social media rant, every scribbled line on paper, every step toward violence was born not in isolation, but inside that house. A house filled with conservative ideals. A house where a rifle was handed down like a rite of passage. A house where change was never confronted, only avoided. And eventually a house where silence broke, not by choice, but by confession. But then came something even more unsettling, something investigators almost couldn't believe when they uncovered it: the bullets. Not ordinary rounds of ammunition, but casings with engravings, words scratched into the very metal, each bullet transformed into something symbolic. These were not random shots waiting to be fired. They carried messages, they carried meaning, they carried obsession. Think about it. Who sits alone carving words into bullets? Who takes time to inscribe a weapon with language before pulling the trigger? That isn't rage, that is an impulse, that is ritual, that is devotion to destruction. And it sparks darker questions. Did no one in the family ever notice? Were there scratched casings lying in a drawer? Hours spent locked away with the rifle? Small, strange signs of fixation that might have screamed for attention if only someone had looked closer? Or were those signs, too, swallowed by the silence? Law enforcement now stands in an uneasy place. Do they blame the parents for keeping the rifle like a family keepsake, unsecured, unmonitored, unchallenged? Or do they quietly feel grateful that, when it mattered most, the father did pick up the phone? Because here's the truth. Most investigations lean on physical evidence, DNA smudges, fingerprints on steel, ballistic reports. But this case cracked open not because of labs, not because of science, but because of one man's words: a father. Looking at a photograph of a rifle and admitting, "That's the gun I gave my son." That moment shifted everything. So where does that leave him? On one hand, he is the man who once placed that weapon in his son's hands, a gesture wrapped in tradition and pride. On the other, he is the man who later turned his son in, choosing truth over loyalty. Is that redemption, or is it confession? Did he stop more bloodshed, or did he simply confront the reality of a bloodshed his own choices had already made possible? And now the hardest question: if it were your child, what would you do? Would you dial the authorities knowing it could shatter your family forever? Or would you bury the truth, shielding your own blood, and carry that unbearable weight in silence? This case does not give us easy answers. It forces us to reflect, to admit the uncomfortable, to face that question no parent wants to face. Who failed Tyler Robinson first? Was it his father, blind to warning signs? His mother, who heard his voice grow louder but never broke the silence? The community that looked away? The law enforcement agencies that didn't act soon enough? Or was it all of us, society itself, a collective blind spot where red flags are visible but ignored, dismissed, brushed aside until it is too late? And that is why this story won't fade. The deeper you look, the more tangled it becomes. It isn't just about a single young man or a single weapon or even one tragic act of violence. It's about silence. The silence we tolerate, the silence we choose, the silence we mistake for peace. It's about blind spots, the things we see but decide not to confront. It's about choices, small ones, daily ones that ripple outward until they become history. Stay with us, because this case doesn't close with a single arrest. It doesn't end with a gavel strike in a courtroom. The questions keep multiplying, the answers keep growing heavier. And if you haven't already, subscribe now, because this is only the beginning of a story that refuses to let go. A story that forces every one of us to stare into a terrifying what if.